What is up, guys? Rick Kackis here. Thank you so much for stopping by, and today we are going to be going over everything getting better in Destiny 2 Season of the Worthy. If you use any of the stuff we talk about today and then use it tomorrow, it will just be a superior experience. And the reason we're doing this is because Bungie has been previewing these changes for over a month now. So many different updates have come out, and it's very easy to have missed certain changes. So, let's get started here with some general changes. Firstly, for Engrams. Legendary Engrams are getting a bunch new weapons and armor from the old school faction rally sets, but for Prime Engrams specifically, you'll have a higher chance when decrypting it to get armor with higher overall stat rolls. In fact, speaking of armor, exotic armor will now more reliably drop with higher overall stat rolls, and legendary armor has a better chance to drop with high stat rolls as well. So expect to see numbers in the 60s a lot more often next season. Continuing the talk about armor, however, armor is getting some huge changes and improvements. So, next season, you will be able to change the elemental affinity of your armor, but remember, it's going to cost the resources that you invest into it. So make sure that you're not masterworking your armor until the next season starts, so you can change the element for super cheap and then upgrade your armor. Not only that, armor will now be able to equip seasonal mods from the season the armor is from, one season before and one season after. So you can have 3 sets of seasonal mods you can equip in one single piece of armor. So armor as a whole is getting a lot better. Alright, moving on from there, let's talk about subclasses. Now we do know of 3 subclass paths that are 100% getting buffed, but we don't know what those buffs are just yet. But you want to be looking out for, firstly, the Voidwalker bottom path, the Devour path, with the Nova Bomb that provides damage over time. This actually got a pretty recent buff to the damage over time tick rate, so getting even better could provide a really viable PvE option, I'm thinking especially. But again, that is being buffed. Another one is the Night Stalker bottom, and this is the tree with Mobius Quiver and multiple Shadow Shot shots. And again, this got buffed pretty recently, I guess not enough, so this could be the tipping point for this getting quite a lot better. Also, the last one confirmed to be buffed is the Striker Middle Tree, which of course is the Thunder Crash super where you fly through the air. Now this has been really falling behind for a while simply because you're comparing it to the roaming super strikers where you can just get so many kills and your super is active for so long, and this is a one and done ability. So it's going to be interesting to see how they improve it, and yet again, this was the recipient of a pretty recent buff where the Thunder Crash ability just did more damage, and you now have the ability to kill guardians outright if you fly through them, like in the air. So interested to see what the changes are for this as well. Oh, and Hunter Trip Mines are getting sticky again. Alright, continuing on from there, let's talk about weapons. Firstly, swords as a whole are getting, in my opinion, much better. There's going to be some new mechanics introduced, mainly sword energy. So when you have your sword out, your melee is going to disappear because you can't really use it anyways. If you press the melee button, you just swing your sword, and it's going to be exchanged with an energy meter. As your energy builds, you're going to be able to use it in a couple of different ways, and you build it by just doing normal quick attacks. So blocking now costs energy instead of ammo. So before, no one would block, aka guard, because you want to conserve your ammo for actually attacking the enemies. Now blocking and guarding is going to be a lot more viable. Or you can use your stored energy on a heavy attack. So now when you do a heavy attack, it's going to use up whatever energy you have, and based on that energy, it's going to do more damage. So if you have maxed out energy and then use a heavy attack, it's going to do way more damage than the heavy attack is doing currently in the game. On top of that, light attacks will chain infinitely, so there's no more break in the action and you'll be swinging more often, aka your rate of fire is basically increasing. Also, swords are going to have a shield bypass mechanic where a portion of the damage goes right through the shields. And again, although that's more of a complete gameplay overhaul than a strict buff, I read those changes as just swords getting better as a whole. But moving on from there, where there's no debate, we have another weapon type getting a huge buff, and that is auto rifles, specifically 3 different auto rifle archetypes, because actually the highest damaging archetype is not getting touched. But firstly, the precision frame, 450 RPM archetype, is getting a buff to precision damage, going from 25.5 currently to 27.2. Moving on from there, the adaptive frame 600 rounds per minute archetype is getting a damage buff overall, going from previously 13.75 body, 22 head, to 15.75 body, 25.2 head. And lastly, the rapid fire 720 rounds per minute archetype is getting buffed, going from currently 12.5 body, 18.75 head, to 13.4 body, 20.01 head. And the numbers to really be aware of are, for the adaptive frame 600s, the headshot damage going to 25 is a nice number to get to 200, and 200 or around that mark is really where you're trying to get for damage, because that's kind of the average health. The average health is actually a little bit below 200, but still. Rapid fires as well. Again, that number going from 18 to 20 is going to basically result in both of those archetypes becoming 1 shot less to kill, which really affects your time to kill. Now, of course, that's just talking about PvP, and by far these changes seem to be oriented towards PvP mostly. However, increasing the base damage is also going to buff these weapons in PvE as well, because that base damage is just scaled up in a PvE environment. So all those weapons, don't think it's just a PvP buff. If you're running strikes, endgame activities, whatever you're doing in PvE, they're going to be hitting harder there as well. Okay, moving on from there, we have a ton of buffs to exotic armor pieces. Again, we're just focusing on the ones that were buffed. So firstly, let's start here with the Hunter. Number 1, we have the Assassin's Cowl exotic helmet. The invisibility and healing effect now triggers on powered melee, both against combatants and guardians and finishers, where previously it was just finishers. Also, the duration of the invisibility granted by this exotic increases based on the tier of the enemy defeated, but arc staff kills will no longer activate this perk. I still think overall this is a big buff. The next buff we have is to the Khepri's Sting exotic gauntlets, and those are going to have all smoke bombs deal 150% damage while you're using this exotic. So smoke bombs and smoke bomb builds are a lot better with the Khepri's Sting. Then we've got the young Ahamkara's Spine exotic gauntlets again. These are going to increase the explosion radius for trip mine grenades by 14%. So you're just going to be able to damage enemies at a bigger radius. Okay, let's move it along to the Titan armor pieces being buffed. Firstly, we have the Ashen Wake exotic gauntlets. So killing an enemy with a fusion grenade while wearing this exotic now refunds grenade energy. The amount of grenade energy refunded scales based on the tier of enemy killed. And that statement, tier of enemy killed, you've heard that before. Essentially what it means is if you kill a red bar enemy in PvE, they're going to give you a certain amount. Then if you kill a yellow bar, they're going to give you more. Then if you kill a mini boss, they're going to give you more. And presumably if you kill a huge boss, they're going to give you your entire grenade back. Next up, we have the Antius Ward's exotic leg armor. The shield created during a slide no longer allows chip damage through. And if I'm reading that correctly, it basically means damage over time and just other damage effects that shouldn't be damaging you, because you should be kind of invulnerable while you're doing that slide, but they do. Well, those are gone, so it's just going to be more consistent in defending yourself next season. Moving on from there, the Dune Marchers, getting huge buff here. They increase the radius of the static charge to 20 meters up from 12. So with the Dune Marchers, as you run and run, you're going to build a charge, and then when you use a melee ability, it's going to spread it over a radius and damage multiple enemies standing nearby the target of that initial melee. And going from 12 to 20, that's nearly double the area of effect. Some people do like using the Dune Marchers in PvP. Well, it's going to have a much higher chance to chain between enemies next season. Next up, the MK44 Stand Aside's exotic leg armor. They reduced the delay from the start of sprinting until the overshield comes to 0.5 seconds, and currently, it's 1.25 seconds. So it's more than twice as fast getting your shield up and getting that protection. Moving on from there, we have the Severance Enclosure exotic chest armor. This is the Season of Dawn new exotic for the Titan. So the explosion now triggers on powered melee, both against combatants and guardians and finishers, and previously it was just finishers. Also, the radius and damage of the explosion created by this exotic increases based on the tier of the enemy defeated. Again, we've been through that. Okay, moving on from there, last class we have to cover is the Warlock. So, firstly, the Apotheosis Veil. This is one of the weirdest buffs. This exotic is now guaranteed to drop with a minimum of plus 16 to intellect. So is that going to result in more high value rolls overall? I'm not sure. It's just a very interesting change. Moving on from there, we have the Sanguine Alchemy exotic chest piece. Now, this is not getting a straight simple buff. It's getting a complete redesign, but considering it's not present in either the PvE or PvP meta at all right now, and the redesign sounds very good, I would consider this a buff. So currently, this exotic chest piece has the following intrinsic perk. Standing in a rift grants you and your allies heightened senses, allowing you to retain your radar while aiming down sights. Additionally, nearby powerful enemies are visually marked and can be tracked without line of sight. So that is going to be changing to a new exotic intrinsic perk called Blood Magic, which allows the wearer to pause the countdown timer of any rift they are standing in by getting weapon kills, extending the rift's duration. So essentially your rift is going to last, let's say, 15 seconds. Whenever you kill an enemy, let's say it's at 10 seconds, it's going to stay at 10 seconds for a certain amount of time and then continue counting down. So if you can just slay out, if you're in a PvE environment and you're constantly killing enemies, you can potentially, as long as there's enemies coming at you, stay in that rift indefinitely. And that is very powerful. Alright, next up we have the Ophidian Aspects exotic gauntlets. So they now increase the lunge range of all Warlock melee attacks, even if the ability is on cooldown. So the Syntheseps for the Warlock. Then we have the Verity's Brow exotic helmet. So it's getting a ton of changes. The intrinsic perk right now is the fourth magic. Energy weapon kills boost grenade recharge rate for you and nearby allies. And here are the changes. So firstly, the buff provided by this exotic now increases your grenade damage by 10% per stack. And the buff to allies' grenade recharge rates now kicks in when you cast your grenade. Additionally, this exotic now provides a buff text notification indicating how many allies are currently benefiting from your increased grenade recharge. Now, the fact that it provides 10% and scaling upwards per stack, so we're talking 20-30% more damage to your grenades, this could be the part of some very powerful grenade builds next season, especially somewhat utilizing the grenade-focused seasonal mods from Season of Dawn right now. In any event, guys, that is it for all of the things getting better starting tomorrow that we know of so far. There may be some additional things in the patch notes, obviously, but these are some great things to be utilizing, to be, potentially leveling up, getting ready, getting out of your vault to prepare for next season. And so, if you enjoyed the video and found it informative, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at @RickKackis. That's linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.